Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that the roof over your head is gone. The walls are gone, the locked door is gone. The streetlight outside your window, the one you never even think about, is gone too. It is night. Real night. The kind of darkness that no longer exists in your world. And you are lying on the cold ground, under an open sky, somewhere on the edge of a forest, 100,000 years ago. You are not the strongest animal here. You are not even close. You have no claws. Your teeth are flat and useless for fighting. You cannot run very fast. You cannot climb as well as the things that hunt at night. Your skin is soft. Your children are slow, and they cry, and the sound carries a long way in the dark. And out there, beyond the reach of your eyes, something is awake. You cannot see it, but it can see you. Its eyes are built for this darkness. Its ears have already found the sound of your breathing. It is patient. It has done this many times before. To it, you are not a person. You are not clever, or special, or the top of any chain. You are meat. This is not a horror story. This is simply what it meant to be human for almost the entire history of our species. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors did not sit at the top of the food chain. They sat somewhere in the middle, soft and slow, surrounded by animals that were bigger, faster, stronger, and far better armed than they were. There were cats the size of horses, with teeth as long as your hand. There were bears that stood taller than a doorway. There were wolves that hunted in packs across the open ground, and eagles strong enough to lift a child off the earth and into the sky. And somehow, with none of the advantages, our ancestors did not just survive. They won. So how did they do it? How did the weakest, softest, slowest large animal on the landscape, an animal with no natural weapons at all, end up not only escaping these monsters, but eventually hunting them, wearing their skins, and outliving every single one of them? The answer is the most important survival story ever told. It is the story of how you came to exist at all. Over the next 90 minutes, you will live inside that story. You will meet the predators that hunted our ancestors, one by one. You will discover the real weapons that saved us, and most of them were not weapons at all. And by the end, you will understand something strange and a little unsettling about yourself. Because the fear you feel in the dark, the instinct that makes you check the shadows, the reason a sudden noise at night can freeze your whole body, all of it is still here, inside you, right now. It is a gift from the people who survived. But to understand how they survived, you first have to understand just how badly the odds were stacked against them. Forget the world you know, forget cities, forget farms, forget the idea that humans are the obvious rulers of this planet. For almost all of our history, that idea would have sounded insane, laughable. A small, hairless ape claiming to be the most dangerous thing in the world. For most of the last 2 million years, the Earth was ruled by giants. Scientists have a name for these animals. They call them the megafauna, which simply means the very large animals. And during the long span of time we call the Ice Age, the megafauna were everywhere. This was not a gentle world. This was a world of enormous bodies, enormous appetites, and enormous teeth. Picture the open grasslands and cold forests where our ancestors lived. Herds of mammoths moving like grey hills across the horizon. Wild horses, giant deer, bison heavier than a car. And wherever there are great herds of plant-eaters, there are always hunters waiting nearby. The bigger the prey, the bigger the predator that learns to bring it down. So the world filled up with monsters. There were cats that could weigh more than 400 kilograms. There were bears that, standing on their hind legs, would have looked you straight in the eye while towering far above you. There were packs of wolves and hyenas that worked together with a patience and cruelty that is hard to imagine. The land itself was a kind of arena, and almost everything in it was better equipped for violence than a human being. And here is the part that is easy to miss. These predators were not living in some faraway jungle. They were living in the same places our ancestors lived. They drank from the same rivers. They sheltered in the same caves. They hunted the same herds of deer and horse that our ancestors were trying to hunt, which meant our ancestors were not only potential prey, they were also competition. And nothing makes a predator more dangerous than competition over food. Think about what that means for a single day in the life of an early human. You wake at dawn already hungry. You have to find food, which means leaving the safety of the group and the high ground. Every plant you gather, every animal you try to track, takes you deeper into territory that belongs to something with claws. The watering hole where you must drink is the exact place where the big cats wait, because they know every animal has to come there eventually. The carcass you smell on the wind, the one that could feed your family for days, is already being guarded by something that will not share, and then the sun goes down and the real danger begins. Because here is the cruel truth about our ancestors. We are creatures of the day. Our eyes are built for sunlight. In darkness, we are nearly blind, stumbling, helpless. But the great hunters of the Ice Age were built for the night. The darkness that blinded our ancestors was the time the predators came alive. So every single night, for hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lay down in a world they could not see, surrounded by things that could see them perfectly. How do we even know this is true? How can we possibly know that humans were hunted when it all happened so long ago? It turns out the proof is written in the most chilling place imaginable. It is written in the bones of our own ancestors. Let us be honest about what a human being actually is when you strip away the tools and the clever brain for a moment. We are, physically, a disaster. Compare a human body to almost any large predator, and the contest is embarrassing. We have no claws worth mentioning, just soft fingernails. Our teeth are flat grinding tools, good for chewing roots and fruit, useless as weapons. We have no thick fur to protect us from cold or from teeth. Our skin tears easily. We cannot see in the dark. Our sense of smell is weak. We cannot climb fast enough to escape a determined cat, and we certainly cannot outrun one in a sprint. A lion can cover the length of a swimming pool in the time it takes you to take 3 steps. Even our babies are a liability. The young of most animals can walk within hours or days of being born. A baby antelope is running with the herd almost immediately. A human baby cannot walk for a year, cannot run for years after that, and screams loudly when frightened. For a parent trying to stay hidden in dangerous country, a human infant is, in the coldest terms, a beacon that announces your location to everything nearby. By every measure that matters in the wild, we should have been easy prey, a slow, soft, noisy animal that comes neatly sized for a big cat's dinner. And for a very long time, that is exactly what we were. But notice something, because this is the key to the entire story. Every single one of those weaknesses is a weakness of the body. And our ancestors did not survive with their bodies. They survived with something else entirely, something that did not leave claw marks or grow fangs, something that was slowly becoming the most dangerous weapon this planet had ever produced. Before we get to that weapon, though, we have to sit with the fear. We have to understand, really understand, what was hunting us, because you cannot appreciate how astonishing our survival was until you have looked the monsters in the face. And the bones tell us they were real. In the year 1924, in a quarry in South Africa, workers blasting through rock uncovered a small fossil skull. It was the skull of a child. Not a human child as we'd think of one today, but one of our distant ancestors, a member of a species we call Australopithecus. This little one had lived and died around 2 million years ago. The fossil became famous, and scientists gave it a gentle name. They called it the Town Child. For decades, people wondered how this child had died so young. Then researchers looked closely at the skull, and they found something. There were strange marks in the bone, especially around the eye sockets. Puncture marks, scratches. And when scientists compared these marks to the damage left by modern predators, they found a chilling match. The marks matched the talons and beak of a large eagle, a bird of prey that snatches monkeys out of trees and tears into their skulls to eat them. The Tong child had not simply died. The Tong child had been caught, carried off, and eaten by a giant bird. Sit with that for a moment. One of the earliest members of our family tree, a small child, was killed and consumed by an eagle 2 million years ago. We did not just live alongside predators. We were on the menu from the very beginning, even before we were truly human. And the Tong child is not alone. In another South African cave, a place called Swartkrans, scientists found the fossil skull of an early human ancestor with 2 neat round holes punched into the back of it. 2 holes, side by side, a precise distance apart. When researchers measured that distance, they found it matched perfectly with the lower canine teeth of a leopard. Here is what almost certainly happened. A leopard killed this individual, clamped its jaws around the skull, and dragged the body up into a tree or down into the cave to eat in peace, exactly the way leopards still drag their kills up into trees today to keep them from other scavengers. The bones piled up in that cave over thousands of years, and many of them are the leftovers of predator meals. Our ancestors, eaten and discarded, their bones gnawed and abandoned. This is the evidence. This is how we know. We are not guessing that humans were prey. We have the skulls with the tooth marks still in them. So this was the starting point, not the mighty hunter, not the lord of creation, a frightened, vulnerable creature whose own children were carried off by birds and whose skulls fit neatly between a leopard's teeth. Now you understand the stakes. Now let us meet the hunters, one by one. And we begin with the most famous killer of the ancient world, an animal whose face is burned into our imagination, a cat with teeth like daggers. You already know what it looks like. Everyone does. The saber-toothed cat is the most famous predator of the Ice Age, and the moment you picture one, you see those teeth. 2 enormous curved fangs, each one as long as your hand, sweeping down from its upper jaw, far past its lower lip. The most famous of these cats lived across the Americas, overlapping with the first humans who ever set foot in the New World. But forget the teeth for 1 second, because the truly terrifying thing about this animal was its body. A saber-toothed cat was not built like a lion or a cheetah, lean and fast. It was built like a wrestler. Its front legs were thick, heavy, and unbelievably powerful, packed with muscle. Its chest was broad and deep. This was an animal designed for one purpose: to grab a large animal, hold it down with raw strength, and pin it to the ground so it could not move. Because here is the secret of those famous teeth. They were not for fighting. They were not even very strong in the way you might think. Those long, curved fangs were actually somewhat fragile. If the cat had tried to bite into struggling, thrashing prey, those beautiful daggers could snap. So the saber-tooth had a method, and it was horrifying in its efficiency. It did not chase, it ambushed. It would wait, hidden, perfectly still, and then explode out of cover in a single overwhelming rush. It would use those massive forelimbs to wrestle its victim to the ground and hold it, there, completely immobilized, crushed under all that muscle. And only then, when the prey could no longer move, no longer fight back, would it use the teeth. A single, precise bite to the throat or the belly. The long fangs would slice through the great blood vessels of the neck, and the animal would bleed out in moments. It was not a fight, it was an execution. Now imagine you are an early human walking through tall grass or along the edge of a thicket. You see nothing. You hear nothing. The saber-tooth is a master of stillness, and your eyes, built for daylight, miss it completely. There is no warning at all. One instant you're walking, and the next you are slammed to the ground by a weight you cannot comprehend, pinned by limbs you cannot fight, feeling teeth find your throat. For an animal with no claws and no fangs of its own, the saber-tooth was a nightmare with no answer. You could not outrun it, because it took you by surprise. You could not out-wrestle it, because it was many times stronger. You could not fight it off, because by the time you knew it was there, you were already beneath it. And yet, the saber-tooth was not even the largest cat our ancestors had to fear. Because over in Europe and across the cold north of Asia, there prowled a predator that was, by some measures, the biggest cat that ever walked beside a human being. And unlike the saber-tooth, this one was not a lone ambusher hiding in the grass. This one had a name that still makes us shiver, and it took its name from the very places our ancestors went to feel safe. We call it the cave lion. The name itself tells you something about the relationship between this animal and our ancestors. We did not name it after the plains or the forest. We named it after the cave, because its bones and its images keep turning up in the very same caves where humans sheltered. The two species were tangled together in the dark. The cave lion was a true lion, related to the lions that live in Africa today, but bigger, considerably bigger. The largest individuals may have weighed over 300 kilograms, perhaps as much as a quarter more than a large modern lion, stretching well over 3 meters from nose to tail. Picture a lion, then imagine it scaled up, broader, heavier, more powerful, and you begin to get the idea. This animal ruled the cold north for tens of thousands of years. It hunted the great herds of horse and deer and young mammoth across the open ground, and it shared that ground and those caves with us. We know our ancestors were frightened of it and fascinated by it because they left us their thoughts. Deep inside caves in Europe, on walls that have not seen sunlight in tens of thousands of years, our ancestors painted the cave lion. They drew it with care and with obvious respect, capturing the shape of its body, the set of its eyes, the way it moved when it hunted. You do not spend hours in the dark, by flickering firelight, painting an animal that does not matter to you. They painted the cave lion because it loomed large in their minds, because it was a power in their world. And the cave was the heart of the conflict. Think about why a human family would want a cave. Shelter from the wind and snow, a solid wall at your back, a single entrance you can watch and defend, a place to keep a fire burning. A cave is the closest thing the ancient world had to a house, and it could mean the difference between living and freezing in the deadly cold of the Ice Age. But the cave lion wanted exactly the same thing, for exactly the same reasons. A cave is a perfect den, a place to rest, to raise cubs, to wait out the storm. So humans and lions were locked in a quiet, deadly competition over the best real estate in the entire landscape. To move into a cave, you might first have to drive out the thing already living there. Or worse, you might settle in, light your fires, fall asleep in your new home, and never realize that the previous owner intended to come back. So now our ancestors faced two of the deadliest cats in history, the saber-tooth that ambushed from the grass, and the cave lion that contested the very shelter they needed to survive the cold. And as if a single giant cat were not enough, there was a third kind of cat in this world, and in some ways it was the most disturbing of all, because it did not hunt alone. A single great predator is terrifying. But there is something even worse than one hunter in the dark, and our ancestors knew it well. It is many hunters working together. Across the Ice Age world, there roamed a different kind of saber-toothed cat, one less famous than its cousin, but in some ways far more dangerous to a human being. We call it the scimitar-toothed cat, and almost everything about it was the opposite of the ambush wrestler we met before, where the saber-tooth was heavy and built for a single crushing pounce. The scimitar cat was lean and long-limbed, built to run. Its back legs were longer, its body more athletic. Its fangs were shorter and flatter, but their edges were serrated, like a steak knife, designed for slicing through flesh on the move. This was not an animal that waited in the grass for one perfect chance. This was an animal that could cover ground, that could pursue, that could chase you down across the open landscape where there was nowhere to hide. And the evidence suggests these cats may have hunted in groups. stop and think about what that means for a human. A lone predator can be watched, tracked, sometimes even driven off if you are lucky and brave, and there are enough of you. But a coordinated group of long-legged hunters is a different problem entirely. They can surround you, they can cut off your escape, they can drive you toward one another, the way wolves drive deer. Cooperation is the single most dangerous thing a predator can do, because it turns many smaller threats into one unstoppable machine. And cooperation, as we will see, was supposed to be our advantage. The scimitar cats were not the only pack hunters in this world. There were also dire wolves, heavier and stronger than the grey wolves we know today, hunting in coordinated packs across the Americas. There were giant hyenas, animals far larger than the hyenas of modern Africa, with jaws powerful enough to crush bone to splinters, and the patience to follow a weakened animal for days. The hyena did not even need to make the kill. It could simply wait and follow and take what was left, and a human who was injured or sick or separated from the group was exactly the kind of weakened animal a hyena learns to follow. This is the world. Cats that ambush you, cats that chase you, cats that surround you, wolves and hyenas that hunt in packs and never give up. And we have not even looked up yet, because some of the danger did not come from the grass, or the trees, or across the open plain. Some of it came from above, and some of it came in a shape so large it is almost impossible to believe it was real. We tend to think of bears as dangerous but familiar. We have seen them in zoos, in films, lumbering and powerful. Now take that image and make it monstrous. During the Ice Age, the caves of Europe were home to the cave bear, an enormous animal, larger than most modern bears, that retreated deep into caves to sleep through the long winter. And here, once again, we find the same deadly overlap. Humans needed caves. Cave bears needed caves. A family creeping into a dark cavern for shelter could find themselves sharing it with a sleeping giant, or worse, could wake one. And a bear woken in the dark in its own den is not a creature anything wants to meet. But the cave bear, for all its size, ate mostly plants. The truly frightening bear of the ancient world lived across the Americas, and it was a different kind of animal entirely. It is called the short-faced bear. The name sounds almost gentle, but the animal was anything but. Standing on its hind legs, the short-faced bear could rise to a height that would dwarf a tall man, looking down on him from above. It had long legs built for covering distance, and many scientists believe it was, at least in part, a hunter and a fierce stealer of other animals' kills, using its sheer size to drive other predators off their food. To an early human in the Americas, a creature like this was almost beyond fighting. There is simply no answer, with a wooden spear, to an animal that tall and that powerful. And then there was the sky. We have already met the eagle that took the town child 2 million years ago. But the threat from above did not end there. In some parts of the world there lived enormous birds of prey, eagles far larger than any that fly today, with talons like grappling hooks and the strength to strike prey from above with the force of a falling weight. On islands like New Zealand, much later in time, there was an eagle so large it hunted birds taller than a person, and when humans finally arrived there, they would have been well within the range of what such a predator could attack. Imagine adding that to your list of fears. It is not enough to watch the grass, the trees, the cave mouth, the dark. You must also sometimes watch the sky. Danger could come from any direction, at any moment, in almost any form. So let us take stock of the world our ancestors actually lived in. Cats that ambush, cats that chase in packs, wolves and hyenas that hunt together and never quit. Bears that tower over you and take what they want. Eagles that strike from above, and a human body that is slow, soft, blind in the dark, and armed with nothing but flat teeth and soft fingernails. But even this is not the full picture, because there is one more cruelty to understand about this world, and it is the cruelest of all. The danger never stopped. There was no safe hour. We have spoken a great deal about the night. But the ancient world was crueler than that, because the danger did not politely wait for darkness. There was no safe hour. The day had its own hunters and its own killing grounds. And the deadliest of them was a place our ancestors could never avoid, because their lives depended on returning to it again and again. The water. Every living thing must drink. In the dry season especially, when the streams shrank and the land cracked, there might be only one water source for miles, one muddy pool that every animal in the region was forced to visit. Our ancestors had to go there, every single day, often in the bright heat of noon. And the predators knew it. They did not need to track their prey across the whole landscape. They simply had to wait, hidden in the reeds and the long grass at the water's edge, and let the prey come to them. The watering hole was a trap that baited itself, and our ancestors had to walk into it daily, just to live. Picture the approach. You come down the worn path toward the water, thirsty, the sun hammering on your back. The reeds are tall, the grass is high, anything could be in there, and you cannot see it. You crouch at the edge, you lower your face to drink, and for a few seconds your eyes are off the world around you. Those few seconds were when our ancestors died. A drinking animal is a vulnerable animal, head down, attention gone, and the hunters of the ancient world built their entire lives around that single moment of weakness. Then there was the leopard, and the leopard deserves its own dark mention. Because of all the great cats, it may have been the one best suited to killing a creature like us. A leopard is not the largest cat, but it is perhaps the most perfectly designed killer. It is silent. It is patient. It is a master of stealth, able to creep within a few paces of its prey without making a sound. It can climb almost anything, which means the trees that might seem like an escape are no escape at all. And it has a habit that is especially chilling when you remember those leopard tooth marks in our ancestors' skulls. A leopard drags its kill up into a tree, wedging the body in the branches to eat in peace away from lions and hyenas. For an ancestor who climbed a tree to escape danger on the ground, the leopard was already there, waiting above, in the one place that should have been safe. And it was not only the great and famous predators. It was everything. A pack of wild dogs that could run you down in the open, a startled rhinoceros or a wounded buffalo that could kill with a single charge, snakes hidden in the grass, the simple, constant danger of being a soft animal in a hard world. Injury itself was a death sentence, because a human who could not walk, who could not keep up, who could not climb or run, was a human the hunters would find, and this is the heart of it. The predators of the ancient world had one great strategy above all others: find the one who is alone. Find the one who has wandered too far from the group to gather food. Find the straggler at the back, the slow one, the sick one, the young one who strayed. Find the moment of weakness, the bowed head at the water, the careless step into the long grass, and strike. So the danger was not a thing that came only at night, only in the dark, only in the cold. It was woven into every hour of every day. The morning forage, the noon drink, the evening return. There was no time when a lone human could relax, no place that was truly safe, no hour without eyes in the grass. By every law of nature we should not have made it. An animal this weak, surrounded by enemies this powerful, hunted by day and by night, should have been wiped from the earth. So how, in the name of everything, did we survive? The answer is the most important part of this entire story, and it begins with the discovery that our greatest weapon was never a weapon at all. Here is the question that should be impossible to answer. How does an animal with no claws, no fangs, no speed, no armor, and no night vision survive in a world ruled by animals that have all of those things in abundance? For a long time, the popular answer was simple. The spear, the club, the sharpened stone. We imagine our ancestors as fighters, finally picking up a weapon and standing their ground against the monsters. And weapons did matter, enormously, as we will see. But weapons are not where the story starts, because for a very long time, Our ancestors survived without any weapon capable of killing a lion. The first and greatest weapon was not held in the hand at all. It was the group. Think about what every single one of those predators relied on. The saber-tooth relied on ambush, on catching one animal alone and by surprise. The leopard dragged off lone individuals. The hyena followed the one who had become separated, the straggler, the weak, the isolated. Almost every predator in nature succeeds by finding the one animal that is alone, and the simplest, oldest, most powerful answer to that is to never be alone. A single human in the dark is prey, but 20 humans together are something else entirely. 20 pairs of eyes watching in every direction. 20 voices that can raise an alarm. 40 hands that can grab rocks and branches. A group that stays close, that sleeps together, that posts someone to watch while the others rest, becomes a problem that even a lion thinks twice about. Predators are not reckless. A hunter that gets injured cannot hunt, and a hunter that cannot hunt will starve. So predators do the math constantly. They look for the easy meal, the safe kill, and a tight, alert, united group of humans is not an easy meal. It is a risk. This is the first secret. Our ancestors did not survive as individuals. No individual could have. They survived as groups, as bands, as families bound together. The lone hero standing against the wild is a fantasy. The truth is the opposite. We survived precisely because we did not stand alone. We stood shoulder to shoulder, and we faced the dark together. But standing together only works if you can do one more thing. You have to be able to coordinate. You have to be able to share what you see, to warn the others, to make a plan, to act as one body instead of 20 frightened individuals scattering in 20 directions. And that requires something that no other animal on Earth had developed to the same degree. It requires the ability to share what is inside your mind. And this brings us to the true engine of human survival, the thing that was quietly growing more powerful with every generation, the thing that would eventually turn the prey into the most dangerous hunter the world had ever known. Our minds, and the fire we learned to carry with us into the dark. Of all the things our ancestors ever did, nothing changed the game more than this. They learned to control fire. It is hard to overstate how strange and powerful this was. Every other animal in the world runs from fire. It is one of the deepest instincts in nature. A wildfire on the horizon sends every living thing fleeing in terror, predator and prey alike. Fire means death, fire means pain, and every creature knows it. Every creature except one. Our ancestors did the unthinkable. They walked toward the fire. They learned to keep it alive, to feed it, to carry it, and eventually to make it whenever they wished. And the moment they did, the entire balance of the night began to shift. Picture that first protected campfire, hundreds of thousands of years ago. A small group of humans huddled around a circle of flame in the deep dark. And just beyond the light, the eyes are still there. The saber-tooth, the cave lion, the hyena, all the patient hunters of the night. But now, something stands between them and their meal. A wall of light and heat and crackling noise. A thing that every instinct in the predator screams at it to avoid. Fire was the great equalizer. It pushed back the darkness that had always belonged to the hunters. It meant that for the first time, our ancestors could claim a small circle of the night as their own, a zone of safety where the rules were different. Inside the ring of firelight, the soft, slow, blind little ape was suddenly protected by something the lion feared. And fire did so much more than frighten predators. It gave warmth, which meant survival through the killing cold of the Ice Age nights. It gave light, which extended the day, giving people hours after sunset to work, to make tools, to talk, to plan, to teach the young. It allowed them to cook, which unlocked far more energy from their food, and may have helped fuel the growth of the very brains that made all of this possible. And it let them guard their kills. A carcass left in the open is a signal to every scavenger for miles, but a carcass beside a fire, watched by people, is far harder to steal. Fire let our ancestors keep what they had hunted. We have found the traces of these ancient fires. In caves used by humans for hundreds of thousands of years, archaeologists have uncovered the burnt remains of countless hearths, layer upon layer, the ash of fires tended over unimaginable spans of time. Fire was not an occasional luxury. It was the center of human life, the glowing heart of the group, the thing they gathered around every single night to hold back a world of teeth. Think about that for a moment, because the echo of it is still inside you. To this day, there is almost nothing as comforting as sitting around a fire in the dark with people you trust. That feeling of safety, of warmth, of belonging is not random. It is hundreds of thousands of years deep. Your ancestors felt it every night of their lives, because that fire was, very literally, the difference between living to see the dawn and being dragged into the dark. But fire could only protect. It held the predators at bay, it guarded the camp, it kept the children safe through the night. What it could not do was let our ancestors fight back. For that, they needed something else. They needed to reach out and touch the danger from a safe distance. They needed to turn their clever hands into something that could kill. They needed a weapon, and what they made would change them from prey into predator. For most of our story, our ancestors were on the defensive. They hid, they huddled, they ran. They used the group and the fire to survive the night and live to see another day. But survival is not the same as power. To stop being prey, they needed to be able to strike back. They needed to put distance between their soft bodies and the teeth of their enemies. And then, in the cold ground of northern Europe, we found proof of exactly when our ancestors crossed that line. In a coal mine, in a place called Schöningen in Germany, archaeologists made one of the most astonishing discoveries in the history of our species. Buried in waterlogged ground, sealed away from the air that would normally have rotted them to nothing, they found spears, wooden spears, whole ones, and these spears were around 300,000 years old. Let that number settle. 300,000 years. These weapons were made and used by a human ancestor long before our own species even existed. They were probably made by the people we call Neanderthals, or their immediate ancestors. And they were not crude sticks. They were beautifully made, carefully shaped weapons, crafted with real skill and real knowledge. Whoever made these spears understood their craft deeply. They chose the wood carefully, favoring the hard, strong wood of the spruce. They shaped each spear so that the heaviest, thickest point was toward the front, exactly the way a modern javelin is balanced, so that it would fly true through the air. They worked the wood with a precision that surprised the scientists who studied them, smoothing and sharpening and tuning each weapon. These were not the fumbling efforts of dim-witted brutes. They were the products of patient, intelligent, skilled minds. Alongside the spears, researchers found other shaped pieces of wood, including what appear to be throwing sticks, weapons that could be hurled to strike prey or drive off a threat from a distance. Do you understand what this means? 300,000 years ago, our ancestors could already reach out and kill from a distance. They could stand in a group with fire at their backs and present a wall of sharpened points to anything that approached. A lion that charges a single unarmed human is making a safe bet. But a lion that charges a tight group of humans holding long, sharp spears is risking a wound that could end its life. Suddenly, the math had changed again. Suddenly, attacking a human was dangerous. The spear transformed everything. It was the claw and the fang that nature had never given us, except that we could make it longer than any claw, sharper than any fang, and we could hold it out in front of us, keeping the danger at the far end of the shaft, away from our fragile bodies. But a spear in the hand is still a close-range weapon. To truly turn the tables, to become the hunter rather than the hunted, our ancestors needed to reach further still. They needed to strike from beyond the reach of claws and teeth entirely. And so they invented something so clever that it feels almost like cheating. Imagine you are holding a spear facing a dangerous animal. The spear gives you reach, perhaps the length of your arm and the shaft together. But the animal is fast, far faster than you. If it decides to charge, it can close that distance in a heartbeat. The spear helps, but you are still, ultimately, within reach of the thing trying to kill you. So our ancestors asked a simple world-changing question. What if we did not have to be close at all? What if we could throw the spear and hit hard enough and far enough to kill before the animal ever reached us? A thrown spear is good, but a human arm can only generate so much force, and so, somewhere in the deep past, a true genius of the ancient world invented a tool to cheat the limits of the human body. We call it the spear thrower. The idea behind it is beautifully simple. It is, essentially, a handle with a hook or a cup at the end into which you fit the back of a light spear or dart. When you throw, the spear thrower acts as an extension of your arm, a lever that adds length and speed to your throwing motion. It is the same principle that lets a longer arm throw a ball faster. By adding that artificial length, the spear thrower multiplies the speed and power of the dart enormously, sending it flying far faster and far further than any human could throw by hand. With a tool like this, a human could now strike an animal from many paces away, from a safe distance, from outside the reach of teeth and claws entirely. A hunter could now put a deadly point into a dangerous animal and never come within range of its counterattack at all. This is the moment the relationship between humans and the great predators truly began to turn, because now the human was the one who could attack from ambush. The human was the one who could strike without warning, from a distance, and then simply step back and let the wound do its work. The slow, soft ape that could not run and could not fight had found a way to kill the fastest, strongest animals in the world without ever touching them, and combine that with everything else. The group watching in every direction, the fire holding the night, the spears presenting a wall of points, and now the spear thrower reaching out across open ground to strike. Piece by piece, our ancestors had assembled a kind of survival machine, a layered defense and a deadly offense, all built not from muscle and fang, but from intelligence and cooperation. Yet even all of these tools were not the true secret. The spear, the fire, the spear thrower, none of these things invented themselves. Something had to imagine them. Something had to remember how to make them, to teach the next generation, to improve them over thousands of years. The real weapon, the one behind every other weapon, was the thing growing inside the human skull. But before we follow that thread all the way to its astonishing conclusion, there are two more pieces of the survival machine we have to understand. Because a sharp mind is no use to a body that has frozen in the night, or to a spear whose point is too dull to bite. The wooden spear was a revolution. But our ancestors did not stop there. Because a sharpened point of wood, however well made, has its limits. It can break, it dulls, and against the thick hide and heavy muscle of a great animal, a wooden tip may not bite deep enough to kill. So our ancestors did something that, when you really think about it, is extraordinary. They combined two different materials, each with its own strength, into a single tool that was better than either one alone. They took the long reach of the wooden shaft, and they tipped it with the savage sharpness of stone. This is called hafting, the joining of a stone point to a wooden handle, and it was one of the most important inventions in our entire history. A worked stone point, struck and shaped by a skilled hand, can be made sharper than almost anything in nature, sharper than a claw, sharper than a fang. A fine stone edge can be sharper than a modern steel knife. And now our ancestors could put that murderous edge on the end of a spear, fix it firmly in place with cords and natural glues and binding, and drive it deep into a target with all the force of the shaft behind it. Think of the skill hidden inside that simple weapon. To make it, you needed to understand stone, to know which rocks would flake into a sharp edge, and how to strike them just so, a craft that took years to master. You needed to understand wood to shape and balance the shaft. You needed to understand binding, the cords and resins that would hold the point fast even as it struck bone. A single-tipped spear was the product of many different skills, many kinds of knowledge, all combined in one object. No animal could make such a thing. It required a mind that could hold many ideas at once and bring them together toward a single purpose. And the weapons kept improving. Where there had been a heavy thrusting spear, there came lighter darts to throw with the spear thrower. And later, in the long story of our kind, came perhaps the finest hunting weapon of the ancient world. The bow is a marvel of stored energy. A hunter draws it slowly, quietly, patiently, loading the bent wood with power, and then releases all of that energy in an instant, sending a small sharp arrow flying faster than the eye can follow. With a bow, a hunter could strike from a great distance, in near silence, again and again, without ever revealing their position. A predator never even knew where the danger had come from. For an animal that had once been helpless prey, the bow was the final transformation, the power to deal death quietly, from afar, before the enemy even knew a human was near. Each of these weapons was a step up the same staircase. Reach further, strike harder, stay safer. From the bare hand to the wooden spear, to the stone-tipped spear, to the thrown dart, to the arrow that flies from nowhere. With every step, the distance between the soft human body and the teeth of the enemy grew wider, and the power in the human hand grew greater. The animal that had nothing was building, piece by piece, an arsenal that no claw or fang could ever match. But even the best weapon in the world is useless to a person who has frozen to death in the night. And in the world of the Ice Age, the cold was as deadly an enemy as any lion. So our ancestors turned once again to cleverness, and in one of the great ironies of our story, they found their protection from the cold in the bodies of the very animals that had hunted them. The Ice Age was not called the Ice Age for nothing. Across vast stretches of the world, our ancestors lived in a brutal cold that is hard to imagine from inside a heated room. Winters that could kill an exposed body in hours. Winds that cut like blades. Snow and ice for much of the year. And remember, the human body is naked. We lost our thick fur long ago. A bare human dropped into an Ice Age winter would not last a single night. And yet they lived there. They thrived there. How? They took the warmth from other animals and wrapped themselves in it. Our ancestors became masters of the hide and the skin. When they brought down an animal, the meat fed them, but the skin clothed them. They learned to scrape the hides clean, to work them and soften them, to turn the raw skin of a dead animal into supple leather and warm fur that could be wrapped around a living body. They learned to cut and shape these skins, and crucially, to sew them together. The invention of the needle, a tiny sliver of bone with an eye bored through it, was a quiet revolution. With needle and thread, our ancestors could make fitted clothing, layered and closed against the wind, the kind of clothing that makes survival in the deep cold possible. And think about whose skins they wore. The very predators that hunted them, the great cats and the bears and the wolves, were themselves clothed in magnificent warm fur. Fur evolved over millions of years to survive the cold. And our ancestors, the hunters now, took that fur for themselves. The hunter became the hunted, and the hunter wore the result. There is something deeply symbolic in it. The animal that once might have dragged a human into the dark could end up as the warm cloak that kept a human child alive through the winter. The fear was turned, quite literally, into protection. Clothing did more than fight the cold. It was also armor of a kind. A thick hide wrapped around the body offered at least some protection against teeth and claws and thorns, against the rough edges of a dangerous world. It let our ancestors move into lands that would otherwise have been utterly closed to them, the frozen north, the high mountains, the harsh open plains. With fire to warm the night and skins to warm the body, there was almost no part of the world too cold for human beings to enter. And this is a pattern you should notice by now, because it runs through the entire story. Again and again, our ancestors took something that should have been a fatal weakness and turned it into a strength, using nothing but their minds and their hands. No fur? Make clothing from the fur of others. No claws? Make spears tipped with stone. No night vision? Make fire. No speed? Hunt with endurance and traps and cunning. Every single thing nature denied us, we invented a replacement for, and often the replacement was better than the original. The body could not be changed, so they changed the world around the body instead, and no creature had ever done that before. But survival was never the work of one person, no matter how clever or well-armed. The spear, the fire, the warm clothing, all of it only worked because of something we have returned to again and again. The group, and the way our ancestors organized themselves, protected their weakest, and shared the work of survival was, in the end, the deepest secret of all. Look closely at a band of ancient humans, and you will see something that no pack of predators ever had. You will see a society. A pride of lions hunts, but it does not plan. A wolf pack cooperates, but it does not teach its young the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 years. A human band did both, and far more. It was not just a group of animals that happened to be near each other. It was a community, with roles, with knowledge, with care, all of it bent toward a single goal: keep everyone alive until morning, and then do it again. Consider how the work was shared. In a world this dangerous, no one could do everything, so the band divided its tasks. Some went out to hunt, ranging far across dangerous ground in coordinated groups. Others gathered plants, roots, nuts and fruits closer to the camp, work that, across the year, often provided more reliable food than the hunt itself. Some tended the fire and the children. Some, the older ones, held the most precious thing of all, the memory and the knowledge, the map of where the danger was and how to face it. Each person was a part of a larger whole, and the whole was far stronger than the sum of its parts. And at the center of it all, always, were the children. Remember how vulnerable a human child is. Slow to walk, slow to run, helpless for years, loud when frightened. In a world of predators, a child is the most precious and the most vulnerable thing the band possesses. So the band built itself around their protection. The young were kept near the center, near the fire, surrounded by adults. They were watched, always. And in this protected space, something extraordinary happened, something that was its own kind of weapon. The children learned. The long, slow human childhood, which looks like such a weakness, is actually one of our greatest strengths. Because all those years of being protected and cared for are also years of learning. A young human absorbs the knowledge of the whole group. How to read the land, how to make a spear, how to find water, to track an animal, to recognize the signs of a predator, to know which plants heal and which kill. By the time a human child grows up, they carry inside them the hard-won survival wisdom of countless generations, knowledge that no animal could ever pass to its young. The protected childhood was the vessel that carried our knowledge forward through time. This is the deepest truth of how we survived. Not the spear, not the fire, not the clothing, though all of those mattered. Underneath them all was this: we were a species that took care of each other, that protected its weak, that shared its food and its knowledge, that watched over each other through the dark. The strong hunted for the whole group, not just themselves. The old were kept alive because their memories were treasure. The children were guarded because they were the future. Cooperation was our claw and our fang. Care was our armor. Together, we were something the lone predators of that world could never be and never defeat. A single human was the easiest prey on the landscape, but a band of humans united was slowly becoming the most dangerous force the planet had ever produced. And that force was about to change everything. Because once our ancestors had all the pieces, the fire, the weapons, the clothing, the knowledge, and above all each other, they stopped merely surviving. they turned at last to face the monsters. And the hunters who had ruled the world for 2 million years were about to learn what it meant to be afraid. Take away the spear, take away the fire, take away every tool, and you still have the one thing that truly made us dangerous: the human mind. Every other defense we have talked about flows from it. The fire was tamed by a mind that could plan ahead and overcome instinct. The spear was shaped by a mind that could picture a finished tool inside a raw branch. The group held together because of minds that could communicate, cooperate, and trust. The human brain was the master weapon, and it worked in ways no predator could match or even understand. Consider memory. A human band carried, inside their heads, a detailed map of their entire world. They knew where the water was and which paths to it were dangerous. They remembered where a lion had made its den, where a hyena pack ranged which valley a bear had claimed. They remembered the seasons, the movements of the herds, the places where predators gathered, and the places that were safe. No single animal could carry all of that, but a group of humans sharing what each of them knew held a living library of survival, passed from old to young, growing richer with every generation. Consider planning. A predator reacts. It sees prey, it hunts. But a human band could plan days or weeks ahead. They could, to reside a valued lie because of what they remembered. They could choose where to camp based on the wind and the shelter and the escape. Routes. They could set out deliberately to hunt a particular animal in a particular place, using a particular trick. They could think in the future tense, and no animal they faced could do that. And consider the deadliest trick of all. Our ancestors learned to study the predators themselves. They watched the lion and learned its habits, when it hunted and when it slept. They learned the patterns of the wolf pack and the patient ways of the hyena. They turned the hunters into the subjects of their study. And once you understand how a predator thinks, you can predict it, you can avoid it, and eventually you can trap it, trick it, and turn its own habits against it. This is the great reversal at the heart of our story. The predators had instinct, honed over millions of years, but instinct cannot learn quickly. Instinct cannot invent. A lion in this world hunted the same way its ancestors had hunted for 1 million years, and it would hunt that way for 1 million more. But humans changed. Within a single lifetime, they could invent a new tool, learn a new trick, develop a new tactic, and teach it to everyone around them. The predators were frozen in time. The humans were racing forward, generation after generation, getting cleverer, deadlier, and more organized while their enemies stayed exactly the same. And so the unthinkable began to happen. The prey began to study the hunter. The hunted began to plan, and slowly, across thousands of years, the soft little ape that hid by the fire began to turn around and walk toward the monsters on purpose. Not to flee them, to hunt them. The age of being prey was ending. The age of the human hunter was about to begin. And what our ancestors did next would reshape the entire living world. There comes a turning point in every great story. The moment when the one who was running stops and turns and faces the thing that has been chasing them. For our species, that turning point did not happen in a single day. It happened slowly, across uncounted generations. But it happened, and it changed the Earth forever. Picture it now. A band of humans no longer simply hiding and fleeing, but moving across the landscape with purpose. They carry spears tipped with razor-sharp stone, shaped by hands that have inherited 100,000 years of skill. They carry spear throwers that can strike from across a clearing. They know how to use fire not just to defend, but to drive animals, to push a herd toward a cliff or a marsh or a waiting line of hunters. They communicate with words and signs, splitting up, surrounding, coordinating like a single organism with many bodies. And the animals that once hunted them now have reason to be afraid. Our ancestors learned to use everything they had against the great predators. They used their endurance, a strange and underrated human gift. A human cannot outrun a deer or a lion in a sprint, but a human can keep moving, walking and jogging for hour after hour after hour in the heat of the day, long after a four-legged animal has overheated and collapsed. Some scientists believe our ancestors hunted by simply following an animal relentlessly, never letting it rest until it dropped from exhaustion. We were not the fastest. But over a long enough chase, we were among the most relentless animals that ever lived. They learned to set traps and dig pits. They learned to read tracks like a story written in the dirt, knowing what passed by, how long ago, and where it was going. They learned to take over the kills of other predators, arriving in a group with fire and spears and noise, and simply driving the lion or the hyena off its hard-won meal. Imagine being a predator, having made your kill, and then watching a band of these strange, loud, upright creatures advance toward you with their points of fire and stone, and deciding, in the end, that the meal is not worth dying for. This is how the relationship finally and fully reversed. Our ancestors moved from the bottom of the food chain toward the very top, not through strength, but through cleverness, cooperation, tools, and sheer relentless will. The same animals that had once carried off our children now retreated when they saw us coming. And then comes one of the most haunting questions in all of science. Because as humans spread across the world, becoming the deadliest hunters the planet had ever seen, something happened to the great beasts, the mammoths, the giant deer, the cave lions, the saber-tooths, the giant bears. One by one, across the world, the megafauna began to vanish. Many of the very monsters in this story went extinct, and the timing, in many places, lines up with something unsettling. It lines up with the arrival of us. Here is one of the great mysteries of the ancient world, and it is a mystery with our fingerprints on it. At the end of the last ice age, a wave of extinction swept across the planet. The giants vanished, the mammoths and the mastodons, the saber-toothed cats and the scimitar cats, the cave lions, the cave bears, the short-faced bears, the dire wolves, the giant deer. Animals that had ruled the earth for millions of years disappeared, in many places within a remarkably short span of time. The age of giants was ending, and a strangely empty world was left behind. So what killed them? For a long time, the obvious suspect was the climate. The ice age was ending, the world was warming, and the great cold landscapes that the megafauna depended on were shrinking and changing. Forests replaced open plains. The food the giants needed grew scarce. It is true, and it surely played a part. The climate was in upheaval, and many animals could not adapt fast enough. But there is another suspect, and it is hard to ignore, because when scientists look at where and when the extinctions happened, a chilling pattern emerges. Again and again, across different continents, the giants began to vanish not long after one particular animal arrived in their world. Us. When humans spread into new lands, the great beasts of those lands often began to disappear soon after. The animals of Africa, who had evolved alongside us for millions of years, learning to fear us as we slowly grew more dangerous, fared better. They knew what we were. But the giants of lands where humans arrived suddenly, fully equipped with fire and spears and spear throwers and cunning, had never learned to fear this strange new predator, and they paid a terrible price. Think about what we had become by then. No longer the frightened prey hiding by the fire. We were now the most efficient and adaptable hunters the world had ever seen, working in coordinated groups, striking from a distance, using fire to drive whole herds, learning the habits of every animal, and turning that knowledge into death. A small number of these clever, cooperative, relentless hunters could put pressure on even the largest animals, picking off the young, the old, the slow, generation after generation, until the great slow-breeding giants simply could not replace their losses. The truth is probably that it was both. A changing climate weakened the giants, stressed them, shrank their world, and into that stressed and shrinking world came a predator unlike any other, one that never stopped, never tired in its inventiveness, and spread into every corner of the earth. The climate may have pushed the giants to the edge. We may have been what pushed many of them over it. It is a staggering thought. The animals that once hunted our ancestors, the monsters that carried off our children and cracked our skulls between their teeth, ended their reign in a world that we had come to dominate. The prey did not just survive the predators. In the end, the prey outlived them all. But survival on that scale leaves a mark. It shaped not just our tools and our tactics, but our very bodies and minds. To understand the full price of what our ancestors went through, you have to understand that the fear never truly left us. It is still here. You carry it with you right now. Have you ever felt it? That sudden electric jolt when a shape moves in the dark where there should be nothing. The way your heart slams and your body freezes before your thinking mind has even caught up. The strange certainty, walking alone at night, that something is behind you, even when you know, rationally, that nothing is there. That is not weakness. That is not foolishness. That is inheritance. For hundreds of thousands of years, the humans who survived were the ones who felt that fear and listened to it. The ancestor who heard a twig snap in the dark and froze, who felt the hair rise on the back of the neck, who chose to be afraid of the shadow that turned out to be nothing, that ancestor lived. And the one who shrugged it off, who walked toward the rustling grass without a second thought, who was certain there was nothing to fear, sometimes that one did not come back. So the nervous ones survived, the cautious ones, the easily frightened ones, the ones who checked the shadows twice and slept close to the fire and never quite trusted the dark. They lived, and they had children, and they passed on the fear. Generation after generation, the world ran a brutal filter, and the ones who feared the right things were the ones who got to become our ancestors, which means the fear is in you now. It was tuned over thousands of generations of life and death, and it does not know that the saber-tooth is gone. Your body still carries the ancient alarm system, finely calibrated for a world of predators that no longer exists. That is why a horror film works. That is why the dark still feels different from the light. That is why a sudden noise in a quiet house can flood your whole body with a jolt of energy you did not ask for. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do 200,000 years ago, on the edge of a forest, under an open sky. There is something almost beautiful in this, when you understand it. Every time you feel that flicker of fear in the dark, you are feeling the touch of every ancestor who survived the night. It is a memory written not in words, but in your nerves and your blood. The terror they felt kept them alive long enough to have children, and those children inherited the terror, and so on, in an unbroken chain, all the way down to you. You are not just descended from the survivors. You are made of their fear, and their cleverness, and their refusal to be eaten. Every one of your direct ancestors, without a single exception, lived long enough to pass on life. Not one of them was caught too soon. Not one of them was the meal. In a world that wanted to eat them, every single one of them made it through. That is your inheritance. That is what you are. Now let us do something. Before we close, let us go back. One last time, let us stand in their world and feel a single night the way they would have felt it. The sun is going down. You feel it before you see it, the way the air begins to cool and the long shadows reach across the ground toward the trees. The light is turning gold, then orange, then the deep blue that means the day is dying. And with the dying of the day comes the old familiar tightening in your chest. The night is coming, and the night belongs to them. Your band gathers close. There are perhaps 20 of you, all ages, the old and the young, the strongs and the small. You move together toward the shelter, a shallow cave with rock at your back and a clear view of the open ground in front. Someone is already working the fire, coaxing the first small flames from the embers carried carefully through the day. The light catches and grows and pushes a circle of warmth and safety into the gathering dark. You eat together, close to the flames. The children are kept near the center, near the fire, near the adults. You can hear the small sounds of your people, the murmur of voices, a soft laugh, the cry of a baby quickly soothed. These sounds are everything. They are the sound of not being alone. Then the dark closes in fully, and the world beyond the firelight disappears. You cannot see it, but you know it is out there. You have always known. Somewhere in that blackness, eyes are open. The great cat is moving, silent, patient. The pack is ranging across the cold ground. You feel them more than you hear them, a pressure on the edge of your senses, the ancient awareness of being watched. But tonight, you are ready. The fire burns bright and tall, and the predators hate the fire. Your spears stand within reach, their stone points sharp, ready to make a wall of pain for anything that comes too close. Someone is awake, watching, while the others sleep, and when that one grows tired, another will take their place, all through the night, as your people have done for longer than anyone can remember. You are not one soft animal alone in the dark. You are many, together, armed, behind a wall of fire, and so you lie down, near the people you love, near the warmth, and you let your eyes close. Out in the dark, the hunters wait, and watch, and finally, finding no easy meal, no straggler, no opening, they move on. They melt away into the night to find something weaker, something alone, something that is not you. The fire burns down slowly, the stars wheel overhead, the watcher watches, and one by one, the long hours pass. And then at last, the sky begins to pale in the east. The black softens to grey, the grey to the first faint gold. The shapes of the trees emerge from the dark. A bird calls. The terrible night is over. You have done the impossible thing, the thing your ancestors did every single night of their lives. You survived until morning, so we come back now to you, to your world of locked doors and streetlights, of warm beds and quiet nights. A world so safe that you can lie in the dark and feel nothing watching you, because nothing is. You can sleep without a watcher. You can walk at night without a spear. You can raise your children without ever once fearing that they will be carried off into the dark. This safety is so complete, so total, that we have almost forgotten it was ever any other way. But it was. For almost the entire story of our kind, it was the other way, and the only reason you get to live in this gentle world is that they survived the brutal one. Think about the chain that leads to you. Every single one of your ancestors, going back and back, through the farmers, through the hunters, through the people who painted lions on cave walls, through the makers of the first spears, all the way back to the small, frightened creatures whose children were taken by eagles. Every one of them lived long enough to pass on life. Through 2 million years of teeth and claws and cold and dark, the chain never broke. Not once. If it had broken, even a single time, you would not be here. They had no claws, and they survived. They had no fangs, and they survived. They were slow and soft and blind in the dark, and surrounded by monsters, and they survived. Not because they were strong, but because they were together. Because they were clever. Because they tamed the fire, and shaped the spear, and watched over each other through the long nights, and refused, generation after generation, to be eaten. And they did more than survive, they turned the whole world around. The prey became the hunter. The hunted became the master. The soft little ape that hid by the fire inherited the earth, and walked into every corner of it, and outlived every monster that had ever hunted it. That is the story written inside you. It is in the fear you feel in the dark, and in the comfort you feel by a fire. It is in your clever hands and your planning mind and your deep instinctive need to be near other people when the night comes. Everything they learned, everything they suffered, everything they refused to surrender, you carry with you still. You are the answer to the question. How did ancient humans survive when everything wanted to eat them? They survived so that you could be here, now, listening to this, safe and warm, in a world they could only have dreamed of. The least we can do is remember them. If this journey into our deep past moved you, stay with me. There are more stories like this one, more lost worlds and ancient nights waiting to be explored, and I would be honored to have you along for the next one. Rest well. You have earned it. They made sure of that.